So now as you're working through your testing process and you're reviewing with your end users and your owners, a good way to actually track your progress and make sure that they're familiar with SharePoint is through a project site. Project sites are a great way to get the users comfortable with SharePoint and actually have them do, to be honest with you, some stealth training to actually get them familiar with working with the capabilities and to actually make sure that the rollout moves very smoothly. Project sites by default contain task lists, documents, calendars, and can be expanded to meet your needs. So as you're moving through those, you can actually have those key users thinking about how they're going through their own processes, how they're going through their own content, and putting it into place correctly. Once you get those key people comfortable with the functionality, they become your first tier help desk. All this is built to make sure that as you bring that flood of new users in at the regular user level, that you've got some people to filter through to help guide them, to help you scale out, to ensure that what's going on with your SharePoint site is appropriate. So with that, we're going to create a quick project subsite so you can actually have those users tracking their information and progress and make sure you know where you are in the rollout process. So here we are back at our familiar SharePoint collection top site. What we're going to do is we're going to go to our site collections, our site contents, and we're going to do something new. We're going to put a new subsite. And this subsite is going to be for our testing project. What we're going to do is we're going to say that we have the new And as you can see, we can name it as we want to. We want something descriptive. Go in and create our project site. And we're going to use unique permissions. We're going to break that and actually have it work correctly. We're going to display this site on the quick launch of the parent site so we can find it quickly. We can have a repository that can come down. We're going to display the site on the top link bar as well. So the quick launch is across the side and the top link bar is just what it says across the top. We're not going to use a top link bar because we actually want them to be able to navigate inside this site, and we'll create it. And we can say that since we broke it up, we're going to create a new group for each one of the users. You can see the owners are already set up as a default from the top. That's copied from the first, but since it's being created since it's being created as a new subsite, it's making copies of these as it comes through. So we'll come through, we'll document the information that we need through here, and then we'll manage it separately as we go forward. And so we have our IT Help Desk testing project site. Now that we have the site, let's take a look and see what we're going to use it for. So as you go through the process of testing and bringing in your content, you want to make sure that your users have the training they need to take advantage of it, to be able to do that testing. Because if your employees aren't aware of how things need to work or how they should work, they're not going to be able to give you effective testing feedback. So the first thing you do is you need to determine the current experience and skills of your employees. Basically, you need to know kind of where you're starting from. If your users are already familiar with maybe SharePoint 2013 from another organization, they're just moving in, you may not need to do any training. Everything may be good to go, and you're just doing your testing and rolling things through. However, that's almost never the case. Basically, you need to look at where you need to bring them up at. One of the things to keep in mind is sometimes your employees with existing SharePoint knowledge can be your biggest challenge. As SharePoint has gone through its various permutations and generations, users get into a set mode of doing things. The SharePoint 2010 to 2013 move is visually not one of the biggest changes that has happened inside of the SharePoint generations. But there's some things that do get depreciated that users do count on in 2010. So knowing that that's going to happen, be aware of what's happening, and be aware of those pieces where your users may have challenges. They may have existing habits that need to be modified and updated for the new capabilities. Whereas users that may not have used SharePoint at all don't have any preconceived notions about how it should work and should be able to roll in a little bit easier. Focus on what the employees need to get their job done. A lot of times we like to look at all the different details inside of SharePoint, all the different potentials and capabilities, and try and give your users all the information possible. For a lot of your users, such as the process people, they're probably just going to be interested in workflow and maybe not the rest. Your designers aren't going to be interested in a lot of the information content. They're just going to want to know how the style sheets work and what the tags and classes are. So know that at least at this point, you're probably going to have a fairly diverse training piece. Keep track of any courses that you provide to them. Make sure that it's focused on those items that they need to do. You may need to bring in some material that you can customize for your organization just to give them a directed focus. Also know which employee types you have. It kind of breaks down into the tinkerer, the process person, the just get it done people. Each of these learn fairly differently, and you know they're going to be going into different areas. Make sure that as you're going through the testing process, you have at least one of each of these categories. The get it done people are going to tell you the easiest way to do it. They're going to give you the modifications to your plan. They're going to mean that the site's going to be the best adopted by those people who just need to get their work done. The process people are going to tell you where there are gaps or maybe things haven't been considered in how they do their work. And the tinkerer is going to tell you two items. One, where your edge cases are and where you need to actually lock things down a little bit more, maybe control things more, and also things that maybe break out of how you look at things and how they look at things, and maybe the deployment can go much better. So you can actually go through and see all of those different details and have those people give you the feedback. An additional help on here, rather than giving each user feedback or having them give you feedback and then bring that back into all of the extra users, is when you're learning this through the testing, when you're learning this through the process adoption, SharePoint actually allows you to provide online help. This custom help is very different from the previous versions of SharePoint. If you've provided this for SharePoint 2007 or 2010, which also had this capability, you know that you actually had to go through and do some modifications to it. The help itself was a bit external to SharePoint as you went through it. You can actually drop it inside the content, but be focused on what your customer help information. There's tons of things already in SharePoint. There's lots of documentation. Part of the problem with the current level of documentation is there is so much, and it's so focused on the capabilities themselves, that finding how it maps over into your users' day-to-day work can be a challenge. This is a great way to get your custom processes and organizational information out. So basically, if you're looking to push out what's going on with your org, if you're looking to actually tie different content types or different repositories into exact places inside your business organization, this is where you can actually put that in place and help it come in. That being said as well, the online help inside of SharePoint can actually be broken down into multiple locations. So you can actually provide very targeted and very specific help. So if you've got different ways of describing things, maybe on a production floor versus on a back office group, you can actually break that down and put those in place. But do know it's going to take some effort and it's going to take some time. So having said that, let's take a look at the settings for the project site and for the online help. So here we are at our project site. We need to make sure that we know what the settings can be for your site owners. Go into site settings. And you can see that because this is a sub-site, things are a little bit different than we've been looking at with the site collections. Know that the administrators of this site have some permissions. We gave them unique permissions, otherwise it would actually tell us to go up to the site collection. And then we've got some administration items for the site itself, but collection administrations all link up to the top. So you can actually see where we're going, what's going on with all of this, and how those go into play. You can see popularity trends. You can actually, again, see the workflow for this site, any sites and workspaces below this site. Remember, sites can have subsites as well. We can go as far down in the turtles as you feel like. We can do regional settings and content, but we're just going to kind of look over this and make sure that we know that, yes, we've got a lot of the same capabilities inside of the sub-site, our project site, that we do at the site collection, but there are some things that are a little bit different. We do want to go back and take a look at the sub-site itself and how the users are going to get up and back to it. You can see that we actually have the site itself is a bit self-contained. But if we drop back up to our primary site, which in a rollout would be our coordination site for all of the different rollouts, we can see that now we've got automatic links for the subsites, both on the top link, which we told it to, and on the launch side. Knowing that, we'll go back to our project site, and since we have the permissions to do so, we'll make sure that our testers here can go back up to our main site, and we'll add a link. To show the So we now have a link to our testing coordination site, and this is also where we would put a link to the actual area that we were testing. So a very quick way to do that and allow our users to go back to the testing coordination site for other projects they may be testing, or to the actual location where they're doing the testing. So in site settings, and so we need to go up to our site collection administration to turn on our custom help. To create our custom help system, we need to go down into the site collection features and enable the feature itself. So you can see in the site collection features, not the site features, we can actually go down and enable a custom site collection help. When we go in and say activate, it's already installed, it's available on the server by default. We activate it, and it will give us a new content type that we can use to actually create the custom help. Go into our site contents. One of the nice features about having it as a content repository is that as you go through the testing and actually test out your custom help, you'll be able to create it, export it, and import it into your production environment and have everything set up just the way you want it. So we have our new, when we activated it, it actually added the site collection help to our site contents. And we take a look at there. We're going to add a new item. And you'll see we can actually add that as a document. We will upload the documents. These may be PDF, they may be HTML, they may be whatever. But you can add all of these documents in for help. This is where your users can put in everything into place. You can actually have all types of different custom information for your end users and test it out with your owners. So now we work with our people and we actually put in all of our new content in here. We know what's going on. We've got our categories and all the rest. How do we actually use that? We can actually look down at the bottom to the site collection administration and look at the help settings. And you'll see that help collections that we have available, these are the ones by default, the central administration help, the SharePoint help, and we have two that aren't enabled, but these are actually from another feature that SharePoint installs by default, which is support for teaching classes and courses. So as you create your additional help features, that will actually show up here. you enable it, and now when your users go to check for help, and we'll go back to the main site and show how it works, they will be able to look for help. And your new content will be integrated in with the rest of it. So you can actually see exactly the details that you want. They can actually go in and look at custom items. So you see we added the student help, and now they can actually see search specifically inside that new help content that we added. Right here it's broken because we haven't activated the student help. It's registered, but there's no content there. When you put your content in, you'll be able to see your base page and all of the different details there. So between tracking, educating, and creating help for your users, you'll be prepared for doing your content rollout for your SharePoint implementation.